Okay, and we are live. Welcome to a new episode of All Things Xbox Podcast. Once again, I have Logan with me. Logan, how you doing?
Doing good, Jamie. Some national pundits say it's going to be a good episode today, so let's hope it's true.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of news drop today already, and honestly, most of it isn't Activision stuff, which is very good because it's getting a bit long in the tooth. I still have flashbacks to a year ago when we were saying it's going to be over in a few months, and here we are a year
Yeah.
later. Like, even in that
How
film.
naive were we?
Yeah, like even in that Phil Spencer interview today, which we'll talk about later in the show, like Phil Spencer just looked exhausted when he was asked about it, because a year is a long time to be talking about the same topic. But yeah, we'll get into that. But before we get into the topics, have you been playing anything interesting?
Yeah, I just finished Dead Space remake and absolutely adored it. The first one was one of my favorite games ever. The trilogy, one of my favorite trilogies. This one took everything from that and made it even better than it was before. The mechanics, the maneuverability, the visuals, the performance, character, like the story is fleshed out more. They reference like other things in Dead Space lore and like um, Isaac actually having dialogue now, and the side quests and New Game Plus. Like it's it's pristine, and I can't recommend it enough. And I've been doing that, Power Wash Sim to chill, and about to start on a kind of cyberpunky mixed with Norse mythology horror game called Apsilov, which it's a it's very interesting indie, and I'm digging the vibe so far. So that's what I'm about to dive into.
Yeah, they did an amazing job with that Dead Space remake because time and time again, some remakes either deliver or they don't. Some remasters they deliver or they don't, and some have like high expectations that some don't reach. And they knocked it out of the park with Dead Space remake. They added a bunch of content, a bunch of the sealed rooms that were in the previous game, which you couldn't go into before. They now have numbers attached where you have to get higher security levels to go into. Just really cool additions, and the fact that they added 360-degree zero G movement, which you had in the sequel, uh, is arguably the biggest deal for that game because they opened up the space station in different ways. Like you must have realized, like when you stepped out onto the dock for the first time, like there's a whole new area to play around with, and there was like
I know it was crazy being able to actually go behind the Hellion and like all this other stuff that wasn't even accessible before.
yeah, and it just I don't know, like it added to not just the playtime but the discovery. Yeah, all these different audio logs, the fact that there's secondary missions you can do, and just all that stuff. And even like the most monotonous part of the original game was the shooting down the asteroids level. And in this
Oh my
game,
gosh, I hated
yeah,
that. Yeah.
everyone hated that. It was terrible. But in this game, it's actually fun because all you have to do is aim with the plasma cutter and just tap A, and it works. And just like something so simple, they fixed. And the reception from the game was like massive. Everyone loved it. In fact, I've never seen a single negative post about the Dead Space remake. So I think we'll get a sequel. Apparently, there's a hidden ending if you play New Game Plus, which
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably play that at some point. But yeah, it looks like we probably will get a sequel, and then who knows? Maybe we'll get a proper Dead Space 3 that isn't a weirdly over the top action game. By the way, a little bit of a rant. Dead Space 3, I've never actually finished because of its absolutely horrendous save system. Because in Dead Space 1 and 2, you go around and see these little save points on walls. You choose when you save. But in Dead Space 3, the game has checkpoints automatically in some levels. So I remember, like, I think it was chapter 6, I had to play about 8 times because every time I progressed forward and then just finished the game or like closed it down, it would put me back to the beginning of chapter 5. And I'm not even kidding, it drove me insane. I almost snapped the disc. Like in a game that's frustrating like Dead Space, where sometimes they put you in a room with a ton of enemies while there's a countdown going on, which happened a lot in Dead Space 3. Yeah, that was frustrating. Like, can you remember how frustrating Dead Space 3 was?
Oh my gosh, yes, and like those raptor dudes
Yeah.
that would, like the stalkers that would hide, and then you hear this, and then they'd like pop out every once in a while, then run off. And in the like the co-op missions, like the story was different but kind of the same, and it just changed the whole vibe of the game itself, and how it was a lot more kind of open. It was during that era when they really wanted to jump into open world everything for games, even games that didn't historically belong in that genre. And so it's like they kind of just pigeonholed a bunch of stuff into a game that didn't really make sense for that game. But I still like it because I'm a Dead Space guy. But I would be thrilled to see what they would do with a Dead Space 3 remake. 2, they could just do exactly what they did with 1. But 3 would be the really interesting one to me.
Yeah, I mean, Dead Space 2 was my favorite, but if they can, like, somehow fix 3, and the premise for 4 was so interesting to me. Like, there's a bunch of information people can read online, but basically, the developers wanted to make the Mass Effect Dead Space combination where you travel from planet to planet, solving different, like, cases, like, trying to, like, defeat market enemies and stuff. And just the idea was, like, Mass Effect 2, but a horror game. And I love that because I ramble on about Mass Effect all the time. So you throw Dead Space in there as well. I'm happy. But hey, we might actually get that now in the studio behind the remake. Clearly know what the hell they're doing. But yeah, other than that, I've been playing Atomic Heart. It's like outside of the corny dialogue, it has some very corny dialogue. It's a good game. It has good gameplay. It's very much a Bioshock style game. Like, it even starts like Bioshock Infinite, and I think they did that intentionally. And I know the developers have said, look, we keep hearing it's like Bioshock, but it's an original game. And I get it, but in my opinion, it's a good sentiment when people say some things like Bioshock. That's like a really good compliment, especially since we haven't had a Dead Space, I should say a Bioshock game in almost a decade. Like, Bioshock Infinite launched, I think it was May or June 2013, so it's been a while since we've had a game like that. It also has elements of Prey with like the light collecting of scrap and all that stuff. So if people like Prey and things like Bioshock, they're gonna love this game. Really gonna love it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyway, we'll move into the topics. First up, we have to start off with Forza. Microsoft just randomly announced that Forza Horizon 5 is getting a rally expansion, and it looks genuinely good. And I think of all Forza games, it makes sense for this one to have rally in it because people have been wanting rally content in Forza for ages, and with all the different biomes you have in the Mexican setting, it's going to be gorgeous. And plus, with the driving mechanics that you have in Forza Horizon, it's going to play good. Did you see the trailer at all, Logan?
I haven't seen the trailer yet, but I've been reading some reactions to it, and it seems overwhelmingly positive. And I mean, Playground continually knocks it out of the park. I have yet to play anything from them that I haven't thought was fantastic, so I'm sure this will be a wonderful addition.
Yeah, it looks good, and I think that's out very soon. But yeah, it looks good. It's also part of the season pass and all that stuff. Next up, Warlong Fallen Dynasty. The demo went live on the 24th of February. It ended 2 days ago. And by the way, did you play it at all?
I have not yet. It's on my list.
Okay, so if people are familiar with Neo 1 and Neo 2, or somewhat Dark Souls or Elden Ring-ish, people are gonna like this. The demo, you can carry forward all your progression to the full release, which launches day one in Xbox Game Pass in March, and it's a very good game. Like, the parrying in that game is extremely difficult. Fortunately, when I played the tech test a few months ago, I didn't even need to parry. I just dodged most of the time. But I've seen some weird comments about that game, and a lot of people have replied to me saying that it's going to be a bad game because it's copying God of War, and it's a God of War clone. And like Logan, you see my the random replies I get on Twitter. I get some absolutely unhinged, crazy replies on Twitter, and every single time there's a game releasing in Game Pass that's also releasing on other platforms, people lose it. People feel the need to get all weird and just automatically like act stupid. Like, I'm sure people in chat have seen the posts on Twitter. And if you're not following me on Twitter, follow me. I post ridiculous things on Twitter that people have replied to me with. But yeah, Warlong Fallen Dynasty is apparently copying God of War, which, I mean, I was speechless. Like Logan, even though you haven't played it, would you say from the outset of just seeing trailers that Warlong is copying God of War, which is a different genre?
No, I would say if anything, it looks like it's borrowing from their inspiration of Neo and Ninja Gaiden, which is, I mean, this is Team Ninja we're talking about. They have a great pedigree of brutally difficult, melee focused, dark, and Oni monsters, and just feudal Japan setting type games. So this is entirely their bread and butter and what they do. The fact that it might have some similarities to a PlayStation exclusive, as far as combat goes, maybe movements and stuff. Like, I really don't see that how that's a thing. Like, it's very much clearly tailored towards their fan base, what they do. They're not going after and trying to copy and paste Sony Santa Monica. I promise you.
Yeah, I mean, like, it does seem a bit like Sekiro, although I will say this, Sekiro kicked my behind. I was not good at that game at all. But at least with this game, I'm somewhat decent, kind of, in a way. Still bad, though. I've posted a ton of Elden Ring footage in the past. I've posted zero War Long Fallen Dynasty gameplay because I'm just so bad. But I enjoy it. A really good game. You can also play it in co-op, which you can't really do with Elden Ring in a way, which we'll be talking about later in the show. But like you said, it does have Ninja Gaiden vibes. So you have Ninja Gaiden mixed in with a bit of Souls and Sekiro. But I think this is going to be a lot of people's jumping in point when it comes to Souls-style games. And even though a lot of the bosses seem really punishing, the save points weren't actually that far away from the bosses, which was a really good appealing thing about Elden Ring. But yeah, highly recommend people check that out. If you downloaded the demo already, you should still be able to carry over your progress from the demo to the full release. And by the way, I hope more games do that. So Dragon Quest XI, before that came to Game Pass, you could play the demo, and I think it was the first 10 hours of the game or something. You could take that over to the full release. Very few games are doing this, but I love the fact that more are at least doing it now. But yeah, cool game. Can't wait to play it more. Anyway, we'll move on. Where are we at? Okay, so Hogwarts Legacy. It's arguably one of the biggest releases of the year. It sold 12 million copies in 2 weeks. It was incredible. Like, bear in mind, I live in the UK, so Harry Potter stuff pretty much is in everybody's household at some point. It's kind of the law that you need Harry Potter content in the house. But like, this is like tearing up the charts. It was number 1 and number 2 spot on Xbox top paid games, and it's an incredible game. It really is. It's going to be a lot of people's game of the year. And the funny thing is, people try to boycott this game, and my stance on boycotts is I'm not really for them in general. I think it doesn't really do anything, and the fact that people say online that I'm not going to buy a game that I wasn't going to buy doesn't do anything. The developers aren't missing out on any money because they weren't going to get the sale to begin with. But it sold 12 million copies. Now, a lot of journalists haven't actually covered what I'm about to say because it's really good. So it sold 12 million copies, but the game is only available on Xbox Series XS, PlayStation 5, and PC. So the game launches on Xbox One and PlayStation 4 in April, which has a absolutely colossally huge install base. And then the game's launching on Switch in June. So this game is probably going to top 20 million copies by July, August. And it's incredible. I celebrate single-player games selling this well. And the fact that it plays so good, it's a beautiful game. Just the writing, the missions, the gameplay in general. The fact that we haven't had a Harry Potter game in over a decade, and that game was we had the Kinect game. There was a game for Wonder Book for PlayStation 3. We had the Deathly Hallows Part 2 on the Xbox 360, which was a movie tie-in game, which wasn't that good. And we've had the Lego games. But outside of that, it's been over a decade without a Harry Potter game. And a studio that had all odds against it, who only made movie tie-in games like Rush, the video game, Bolt, the video game. You know, if there was a Disney movie between 2005 and 2012, chances are they made a cheap video game based on that license. And the fact that they are now a solidified AAA RPG developer puts a smile on my face, because we're going to see more games in this universe and see more big RPGs with bigger budgets by Warner Brothers. It just makes me happy. Logan, what's your thought on this? Because I know you said you weren't picking it up just yet, but the fact that it's selling so well, it's got to interest you a little bit.
Yeah, it's doing phenomenal. It shows that the internet mob didn't get what they wanted on this. Like 12 million plus, and you're excluding Xbox One and PS4, which there are a bajillion more of those out there than there are, current gen consoles now. So you add those, and then I don't know how on earth they're gonna get that thing to run on Switch. Probably cloud version, but that'll be a ton more people as well. And I'm glad it's doing well. I'm glad that the bullies didn't win on this, and I'm glad that people are enjoying it. I've talked to some folks and they've been like, "Man, I'm just in love with this game. It's so good." And they're just like hardcore Harry Potter people. And they weren't even, aware of the outside noise about it. They just like, "Harry Potter game's coming out? Awesome." And they jumped in and played it. They've loved it and been blown away with it. And I'm definitely looking forward to jumping in later.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing about Hogwarts Legacy is that it appeals to non-Potter fans, which is huge. Like, the demographic for this game is wild, because you have gamers that are Harry Potter fans, so they obviously going to get it. You have RPG fans looking for something new, which they can get into it, and it appeals to non-gamers who are Potter fans. Like, I know there's people that have picked up consoles because of this game, and they'll become, gamers now. And Hogwarts Legacy, apparently in the UK, is outpacing Elden Ring. Elden Ring ruled the UK last year. It's still selling well, it's still showing up in the top 10, and it'll probably show up next year as well. But Hogwarts Legacy is going to be one of those games that stays in the charts for a long time, because I was sick of seeing GTA 5 in the top 10 for the past, 10 years? Every single week.
GTA and Call of Duty.
Yeah. Like, if you live in the UK, I know the list's probably similar in the US, but like in the UK, the chart always has Minecraft, a Lego game, GTA, and COD, and FIFA. And every now and then you have a sporadic title in, like, your Elden Ring and all that stuff. But yeah, it's good to see that a game like this is selling really well, especially considering, look, let's face it, everyone was trying to get this game cancelled. Everyone. Digital Foundry didn't put out a video straight away because of their stance on everything. And look, I don't support boycotts for video games, because it does nothing. Atomic Heart is a weird situation, but you playing this game doesn't make you a bad person. And bloody hell, every developer and studio over there, they aren't supportive of the USSR, so that's a different kettle of fish. But Hogwarts Legacy, regardless, doing well. Apparently, Atomic Heart is doing really well in the UK on Xbox as well. Obviously on PlayStation, but like the fact that launched in Game Pass, really cool to see. But yeah, good time to be a fan of single player games. By the way, that's something that really annoys people, is that I prefer and push single player content, but I'm an Xbox fan. Like,
How dare you?
Yeah, there's this assumption that Microsoft just dabbles in live service games, but if you look at their portfolio, it's majority single player. So there's that. Anyway, we'll move on. I want to talk about the whole Twitter thing, because I get a lot of dumb replies constantly, and when you cover gaming, people just whine all the time. I could post a picture of an orange and people would complain, make it about the console war thing. And, people have asked us, like, does it actually bother us that I get these replies all the time? Does it drive me nuts? And the truth is, it doesn't. I just kind of laugh. The fact that I can post something as simple. Like the other day, I made a post about how Xbox is focusing on having a variety of titles as opposed to what they used to do. They used to just make Halo and Forza. They didn't even own Gears. It was just Halo, Forza, Halo, Forza. Fable, which we didn't have for a while. And I made a post saying, Microsoft, they are diverse now. Hi-Fi Rush is something you wouldn't have seen from Microsoft 10 years ago. At all. But now it is. And now it's something you can expect to see more of. And the amount of hate that post got. People losing their mind. Like, I think it got over like 100 comments. And most of them were angry people. And it's like, if you look at Microsoft, look, back in the early Xbox One days, we can all agree Microsoft didn't have a strong foot when it came to first party titles. They weren't putting out titles regularly, and every title they did put out was scrutinized beyond belief. Like Sunset Overdrive by Insomniac Games is incredible, but everyone looked at that in a negative light because it was 900p. And that carried forward to Quantum Break and all these other titles. But every time Microsoft put out a title that was 1080p, 60 frames, nobody mentioned that and just kind of bashed it still. People can say what they want about Halo 5, but I enjoyed it. I think the multiplayer in that game was super fun. But 20 years later, Xbox still gets this hate. And if you go back 20 years ago, the original Xbox was known as the hardcore console. You got that to play Knights of the Old Republic. You got to play Splinter Cell and Halo. And that was where you went to play multiplayer games. Then the Xbox 360 came along and was massive. Absolutely massive worldwide. It was massive in the UK. Xbox became the dominant platform for an entire generation in the United Kingdom. I think to this day, the Xbox 360 is actually the best-selling console of all time in the UK, which was a big deal. There were game stores in the UK that was specific to the Xbox 360. So where am I going with this? All these years later, people are still trying to push this narrative that Xbox hasn't changed. And it's like, Logan, where do you think Xbox would be right now if they didn't get Game Pass and Don Matrick was still at the top?
It would be a third-party platform 100%, or they would have sold off everything, or it would just be dead, buried, and gone. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, like Microsoft's still recovering from the whole Xbox One launch, right? And it's been almost 10 years, but Microsoft's still trying to repair that situation. And I remember there were game-specific stores in the UK that as soon as the whole 2013 launch happened, they actually had a poster in the window that said, look, you cannot sell and buy used games on this platform, even though Microsoft already cleared that situation up. So when they launched the console, it wasn't an issue, but stores were still pushing it. There was and I can't, legally, I don't think I can say the name of this specific shop, but there's an online retailer in the UK who had a podcast. And when the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 launched, they were pushing PlayStation 4 consoles and just bashing Xbox One constantly. And it got so bad to a point where people were complaining, saying, look, how can you be a retailer in favouring one console? So they stopped doing the podcast. And about a month later, they came back saying, okay, we're back. We're going to be showing each console, the same love and all this stuff. And it just delved into bullcrap again. And there was all this favoritism in the UK for years. And it still persists. It still persists. That's why you might see me get annoyed online. It's not the fanboys that reply to my Twitter threads. It's not the stalkers that follow me for years and do this crap. I actually just roll my eyes at the UK media and the way the UK pushes negativity towards Xbox. That's pretty much up my rant. So why am I talking about this? Because this is going to lead to what we're going to be talking about later on in the show. Bit of a tangent there, I know. We're about half an hour in the show. If people enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications, all that stuff. YouTube's having some weird difficulty at the minute of putting out content, so people aren't getting notifications, all that stuff. It's much appreciated. And Super Chat's alive if you want to do all that stuff. Okay, so Activision, right? Normally we used to have Activision content at the end of the show, but let's face it, it's long in the tooth. And well, we have a lot more fun things to talk about this week. Logan, what's new in the Activision sphere? Because it looks like, hopefully, things are finally closing, kind of.
Yeah, latest is they are currently, talking with the CMA and the EU about possible remedies and doing appearances in a tribunal and stuff like that and trying to get things wrapped up. They've proposed some remedies, and so they're just kind of in a negotiations point right now, and wait and see to see if these people find these satisfactory, or if it proceeds further into more court stuff. But it sounds like March is going to be a slog of just back and forth remedy talk, and what if we did this, or okay, here's a counter, how do I respond to this? And it's going to be a lot of that. But by April 11th, we should be very crystal clear on how this is going to go. Like, is this going to court everywhere, or is it just going through, or are they just going to say, you know what, forget this and walk away? Which I don't think is going to happen. But by April 11th, we should be pretty good on where this is going to be at. And there was some buzz the other day about potentially them making a concession that included all ABK games, which would have been a fascinating idea, but Bill came out and basically squashed that today and was like, Call of Duty is the one we're talking about, maybe some other ones, but Call of Duty is the focus for the non-exclusivity. And he went into depth about that, Starfield, some other comments in his interview today he had with Xbox UK, which we can hop into. But basically, this thing is we're in the closing legs of it. So thank the maker, we're getting there. We're close to done on majority of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think all gamers, like whether you support Xbox, PlayStation, if you're on Nintendo, you must be ecstatic because you're going to get Call of Duty for the first time in about 11 years, which is really cool. But yeah, it's a bit long in the tooth. Oh, we have first super chat today by Soren X 477. Great work, dudes. Thank you very much. It's always appreciated. But yeah, like I think like when it comes to all these purchases and stuff, you have Microsoft. They went out a few years ago and they acquired Ninja Theory. They acquired Playground Games, which was arguably probably one of the best pickups for them. It made the most sense. Compulsion Games, Undead Labs. Those studios really made sense at the time for Microsoft. And then when they got Bethesda, they announced the Bethesda acquisition. I think it was the day before the Xbox Series X and S pre-orders went live, which was a very smart choice.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, like I know people that pre-ordered just because of that, because you're going to get, Bethesda games and Game Pass. And you have to realize there's people that only play Bethesda games. Like there's a large majority of gamers that will just go out, buy a console, buy a PC, and they will just no life Skyrim and Fallout, and that's really cool. That's what they like to play. Now you have Elder Scrolls Online, which is massive. It's one of the biggest MMOs on the planet, and things were progressing along. And then this whole Activision thing a year ago, a lot of people are getting sick of it. We all know the deal. The Call of Duty thing is big because, it kind of came out yesterday that Sony basically makes their first party games due to the amount of money they make off COD. Now, that doesn't surprise me. Call of Duty sells absolutely gangbusters on all platforms that it's available on right now. It's the best selling game every single year without fail. So, like, the fact that they make 30% on each copy, that doesn't surprise me. at all. Like, I would like 30% of Call of Duty sales. I'd be bloody rich. Um, but like, it doesn't surprise me, and I don't understand why that was an argument, because they're gonna get Call of Duty anyway. They're still gonna be making 30% per sale, meaning they can still make their first party titles. So when that came out as a negative, I kind of shook my head, because that doesn't even make sense. Like at all. Like nothing's going away. They're still gonna get their 30%. Like, Logan, you have to admit that was pretty stupid. How people were freaking out.
Yeah, the whole Call of Duty thing has just it's become its own thing. Like whenever this deal is inevitably done, yay or nay or chopped up into pieces or whatever they do with this thing, whenever it's done and years later we have a documentary about it, the whole Call of Duty obsession is going to be a major chapter because it is mind-boggling just how focused they are on this one thing. And to me, like at the risk of sounding armchair dev or armchair businessman, it doesn't seem like a great strategy to have so much importance on one third party title for you funding your own things. Like maybe that's putting too much eggs in one basket kind of thing. But the whole, we will lose access to COD. It's like the meme that, Lulu did the other day, where, it's like complains about access to COD, rejects deal for guaranteed access to COD.
Yeah.
What about my COD? It's like you're getting your COD, okay? there's no worries. The only thing that they could possibly worry about at this point is that not everybody who bought Call of Duty specifically on PlayStation would continue to buy 100% Call of Duty on PlayStation if it is available in Game Pass day one date on Xbox, so it cuts into their margins a little bit. Would it completely remove everybody who played Call of Duty on PlayStation? Absolutely not. That'd be insane turnover. Like some people will switch. It'll happen. But the idea to say that they would lose everybody or the vast majority of people is laughable. They're going to be just fine. The multi-billion dollar media company is going to be just fine. They're ahead of everybody in all these metrics, even with Activision Blizzard added Xbox. So, the woe is me Sony thing was comical at first, and then annoying, and now it's just downright sad. Like, just stop it.
Yeah, I mean, like, the fact that they offered a 10-year deal, and Sony wants this I can't pronounce it at the minute, perpetual agreement to get Call of Duty for life. Well, that doesn't really make much sense. Like I said last week, like, Call of Duty 10 years from now might be a different thing. Call of Duty 10 years from now might be known as just Warzone. We don't know. Things can change. Who knows? Maybe they come out with another first party, I should say, first person military shooter that overtakes Call of Duty. You never know these things. They can't make an agreement for eternity because they just have to churn out games just to fulfill a contract, which wouldn't make sense. But 10 years, like, I'd say, I think we could all agree that 10 years from now, Call of Duty is more than likely still going to be here. 15 years from now, we just don't know. Things can change. I keep saying I want Medal of Honor to come back, but that's a year. I really want Medal of Honor to come back at some point. But yeah, like Sony has nothing to worry about. They're still going to get their money. I just think it's funny that all the concentration is on COD. No mention of Diablo, no mention of Overwatch, nothing. Just COD. And the fact is, like, Phil Spencer said in the past, like, he would like more studios to work on different games outside of COD. Because when you watch the credits for a Call of Duty game, you see this long list of studios that just make content. They make map packs, characters, pretty much anything for COD. Those studios used to make things like Transformers games, Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, Tony Hawk Pro Skater. Like, the fact that they have Tony Hawk Pro Skater devs making Call of Duty content blows my mind. It really does. Like, and the fact that I'll say it again, Raven Software, the studio behind Singularity, make Call of Duty content. That's so sad. Like the team behind the Transformers games that people love, which I really need to get to at some point, those make Call of Duty content. Like that must be soul crushing. And the fact that Call of Duty is seemingly moving to uh, you know a biannual year, whatever you call it. Every other year we'll see a major release followed by a smaller update pack. So this year we're getting Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 again, but it's more of like an add-on pack or standalone expansion, which, I mean, that's one way of doing it. So next year we're going to see Black Ops Return, and then the year after that it's going to be a Black Ops update. And it looks like from now on, Call of Duty is going to be a rotation of just Modern Warfare and Black Ops. I mean, that's a story for another day. Personally, I want to see Infinite Warfare with a sequel. I will talk about Infinite Warfare and promote that all day, because I think it's an amazing campaign. Just wondering, Logan, did you ever play Infinite Warfare's campaign?
Yeah, and I will fight on that hill that it is the best campaign that they've made for a Call of Duty game besides like the original trilogy of Modern Warfare trilogy. Like it is brilliant sci-fi. Like I want a sequel for that so bad. And if this deal goes through, you know what? There's a chance we could actually see that sequel. So come on, like let's get this done.
Yeah, I mean, when I tell people I buy COD for the campaigns, they look at me like I'm a crazy person. It's like I've slipped a crazy pill and I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I love Call of Duty campaigns. And Infinite Warfare was just so good. So good. The cutscenes are almost lifelike. The gameplay was solid. The story was basically taking elements from The Expanse. And it just works. I highly recommend people play Call of Duty Infinite Warfare's campaign. It'll probably come to Game Pass in the next few months or something. And I'll say Game Pass because Call of Duty rarely goes on sale. I was looking at Call of Duty Ghosts last week and it was like £50. Like, that's how much it launched in the UK. It hasn't dropped a penny. And I was just like, nope, I'm not buying that at all. £20, I'd be like, okay. But yeah, £50 for a 10-year-old Call of Duty game. Nope, not happening at all, ever. Just want to know, is it the same in the US? Like Call of Duty games just rarely drop in price?
Yeah, it's a sick joke. It's like Nintendo first party. Like they never get below a certain price. Like um like Nintendo games like first party, like I rarely ever see a first party game lower than $39.99, even if it was a Switch launch title. Or like a port of a Wii U title. And like Call of Duty is the same thing. It's like even all these years later, Ghosts with expansions and stuff sells for a ridiculous amount of money, and so does Modern Warfare or Advanced Warfare, and all of their games, like even the 360 ones, they sell at a premium compared to most BC games are probably in the $10 range, maybe a little bit more. Like theirs are consistently like $20 or $30, or even 360 launch, like jump all the way back to Call of Duty 2 and 3. Like it is madness. That is one thing that absolutely needs to change. Assuming deal gets done, please Phil or whoever becomes in charge of Activision Blizzard, you got to work with the people on the older Call of Duty games because it is prohibitively expensive all these years later, and you want more people to jump into the franchise and get versed in it. Like, throw us a bone here. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's only two Call of Duty campaigns I've never played, and that is Ghosts and Black Ops 3. Those are the only two, and the prices just never drop. And I just can't justify spending £50 on a 10-year-old Call of Duty game that you can still buy easily. Like, that's out of the question. You mentioned the Zelda thing. The other day, one of my friends told me that he was going to buy the latest Pokemon game, but he's going to wait for a price drop, and I just burst out laughing. Like, oh
yeah, good luck with that, buddy.
Yeah, like Switch games do not drop at all, and yeah. By the way, if anyone has a dip in quality in audio, just let me know in chat. But yeah, like those games just don't drop. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll be talking about the Phil Spencer thing in a bit. Suicide Squad. There was 15 minutes of footage shown on the PlayStation Showcase State of Play, and the internet is kind of angry about it. I'll say this: from watching the gameplay, and as someone that loves the Arkhamverse, I absolutely love the Arkham games. This is set in the same universe. It's set 5 years after Arkham Knight. Honestly, I like it. The second I saw damage numbers and armor stats, I knew people were going to revolt. It seems par for the course at the minute. One of the reasons why I have Guardians of the Galaxy footage in the podcast, because people were replying to me hyping up Guardians of the Galaxy saying, "I'm concerned, Jamie, because of Avengers." Well, this gameplay was shown, and guess what? Every post about this Suicide Squad's about Avengers. Honestly, I think the game looks cool, and people might have been a little bit burnt out on Gotham Knights, although I thought it was fun. I don't know. I think it could be a good game. What's your thoughts, Logan? Because the internet seems kind of split on it.
Yeah, I'm probably not the person to ask about the Batman games because I haven't actually played them. Like, I bought the collection, the Arkham collection, and it's in my backlog and I want to play them. Superhero games I generally haven't played too much, but I have definitely seen all the outcry and a lot of people angry. But then I see folks like yourself who are very dedicated to the franchise and are fine with it and think it's cool. So I really don't know what to say about it, to be honest.
Hold on, you've never played the Arkham games?
No, I have not actually.
Wow, dude, right? Arkham Asylum it came out in like 2008 or something. It had a demo, and that demo sold a lot of people on that game. It had a tiny bit of marketing, and not a lot of people had any faith in it because it was just yet another superhero game that people accepted. It was going to be kind of, let's face it, mid at best, right? And it smashed records. It solidified Rocksteady as an amazing studio. Like, we went from having crap superhero games for the most part to an excellent game. Like, it's just the first game set on Arkham Island, very small game. It's a Metroidvania. You get gadgets throughout the game that open up new areas. Play it, seriously. It's one of the best games ever made, and in my opinion, the sequel's even better. But yeah, quite shocked at that because like those games are so good. Like, even if you're not into superhero games, they're genuinely good. Arkham Origins, the prequel, in my opinion, it's very good. It's a bit buggy.
My thoughts on Batman all these years later.
Good. But yeah, so this looks like they're taking live service elements and putting them in that world. Honestly, the gameplay to me looked like Crackdown in the latest Suicide Squad gameplay. If people are enjoying the show, please let me know if the audio's coming through fine, because I've got the Spiddy logo thing at the minute. Okay. I think it's fine. Yeah, I think it's fine. So if there's an outage of audio there, YouTube is acting up tonight. Yeah, we'll move on. I thought the game looked pretty good. It's more Arkhamverse, which I want. We got to see Wonder Woman. Yeah, if anyone chat, let me know if it's working now. It seemed to have paused for about 4 seconds. YouTube is having some weird issues at the minute. The YouTube app on Xbox, PlayStation, and Apple devices was just down yesterday. So it's a YouTube thing. Give me a moment. Okay. If people listen to this later, YouTube is just having all sorts of issues at the minute. And the thing is, my bitrate is high. So on my end, it's completely fine. I'm hooked up via Ethernet, so everything should be fine. But yeah, YouTube, billion-dollar company, can't keep their app working constantly. Anyway, okay, now it's working. Okay, thanks. So basically, Suicide Squad looks like Crackdown to me. The fact that it has a battle pass really threw people through a loop because it's just cosmetic. They did say that. It's just cosmetic, and I think if you're going to do a battle pass to support the game post-launch, just do it cosmetic. Like, that doesn't really bother me. I don't really buy cosmetics in video games. I don't really care. Um, but like for the most part, the gameplay looked good. I'm just excited. We're finally going to see Gotham City. Metropolis, and we're going to see Superman, Green Lantern, all up in the Arkham verse. And like, I might ramble on about Mass Effect now and then on Twitter, but the Arkham games are just so much fun, and I love the fact that we're going to see more of that universe. Uh, yeah, let me know in chat if the audio's coming through fine because we dipped again. But yeah, I think it's going to be a cool game. I think people just need to wait and maybe like play it or see more of it. I think it'll be a cool game, but that releases in May, so plenty of time there. We'll move on. Elden Ring, arguably one of the biggest games this generation. It just sold 20 million copies, which is outstanding, like absolutely outstanding. And a lot of people were like kind of surprised that it sold like that at all. But you have to realize it was marketed really well. You know, the studio let people know it was definitely on Xbox, it was definitely on PlayStation. The trailer literally showed you what that game was about. You run around on a horse goat thing, you explore, and you fight. That's all you do in that game. Explore and fight. And the game was executed perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. And it got a lot of people into Souls games. Because if you've never played a Souls game, or if you're terrible at Souls games, chances are you're going to be good at Elden Ring. Like, I've played almost every single From Software game, and the only one I've ever been able to finish is Elden Ring. Ever. Which is a big deal. And, you know, selling 20 million copies for a new IP in 1 year, I think it's 1 year minus a week, is a huge deal. But anyway, they announced today at like 6 in the morning that it's going to be getting a new expansion. And the expansion is going to be called, excuse me for a moment, Shadow of the Erd Tree. Now, all we have is a 4K image of some fields with a character on a horse. Nobody really knows who it is, but other than that, it looks like it's going to be set in a new area. There's gold dripping from the Erd Tree. It looks like it's obviously set post the ending. Logan, I know we both ramble on about Elden Ring all the time just because of how good it is. What's your thoughts on this? Because like, it was just announced out of the blue.
Oh, it took me by surprise when I hopped on Twitter this morning, and then like I saw Elden Ring trending, and I was like, man, I love Elden Ring. Probably somebody did some crazy video again with like some Congo drums controller or something like that to take on Maquella or whatever. But I'll check it out, and then I hop on, and I'm like, wow, they actually announced the expansion. Like, figured it was coming. Like, you know, the game was an incredible masterpiece. Beloved, won all these awards. Everybody loved it. Took over the internet for like a whole summer because, you know, like, even people that weren't gamers got into it because of Elden Ring. And so the fact that there's a new expansion coming, I'll be there day one, 100%. Like, you know, I'll be there, and I can't wait. And I'm super fascinated to see where they take the story, because obviously there are some vastly different endings in that game. So I'm curious to see how they work with that. But you know, the Erd Tree, all the lore involving that, and the people, you know, dealing with that particular entity, it'll be fascinating to expand on that.
Yeah, like people love that game. Like I was saying, like the trailer just shows you what you do in that game. You just fight and explore, executed perfectly. It's one of the few games I played. It literally had no bugs. I never experienced a single bug playing that game. And like you're saying, it got people into gaming. Like I've seen non-gamers pick this up and play it better than actual gamers. And I think it's because we're so used to playing video games for years and years that have things like weapon clipping through walls and stuff. That if you give it to a non-gamer, their minds think more physically and logically than we do. So like in a game like Skyrim or most of the fantasy games, if you're walking down a corridor and you swing a sword, the sword usually goes through the wall. Well, a non-gamer thinks, well, oh, it would hit off the wall, and that's what happens in From Software games. There's no clipping with at least player items with walls, and just stuff like that, like all these like small things. and it's such an easy game to get into. The fact that there's these statues of Marika, I think they called, where basically if you lose against a boss fight, you don't have to spend half an hour running back like you did in Dark Souls games. No, no, you spawn directly outside of the boss area, which is so good, in my opinion. Like, remember run back slogan in Dark Souls?
Oh yes, don't even talk about Blighttown. That thing was awful. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, so awful.
like the main reason I didn't actually finish Dark Souls 1 is because the run backs to some of the bosses, just like you'd spend like 20 minutes battling enemies, losing health, and then you'd finally get to the boss and you get your ass kicked basically, with no potions. But in Elden Ring, that's not a thing. People have always asked me, like, should I get it even if I don't like Souls games or if I'm bad at them? Like, it offers you so many different options. Like, there's these like summons you get throughout the game, where basically you can have another character or a bunch of characters help you in battle. And like, if people are interested on the channel, I uploaded a 2 hour 40 minute video of literally me fighting every boss fight in order, and you can see me go from absolutely mediocre, mid, to somewhat decent right, by the end. And it's spread over, like, I think I played it over 3 months. There's over 150 bosses in that video. Took a while to render, I'll just say that. But yeah, Elden Ring, 20 million copies sold. The expansion's probably not that far away. The first expansion for Dark Souls 3, I believe, launched a year and a month after release. So we might be seeing the same situation. That's the thing about From Software. They are so secretive. People don't know crap until it happens. They announced Armored Core 6 at the Game Awards, and it didn't leak. Some screenshots leaked a year ago, but we're not going to count that because they were terrible. But yeah, From Software, they're doing some good stuff. This is going to go down as one of the best games of the generation when it all comes to a close. But yeah, highly recommend people check that out. The game's probably going to reach 40 million by the end of the generation, especially after that DLC comes out. But yeah, good times to be a fan. About now in the show, again, sorry for all the audio issues. YouTube's been crap at the minute. If you're enjoying the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit that bell for notifications. Really helps the channel out. Super chats are alive if you want to do all that stuff and support. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay, Baldur's Gate 3. This has been a weird situation over the past week because we've all seen it. You go back about a year ago, I was making posts online saying, I think I want to see Baldur's Gate 3 on Xbox. I love RPGs. This RPG's been in development for years now. It's been in beta for a year. And they're finally coming out this August. Well, it was announced at the State of Play. It's coming to PlayStation and PC. And I'll put it like this. My Twitter feed was in absolute turmoil. The world went upside down. Cats and dogs were living together. Crazy town. And people were blaming the studio and blaming PlayStation for, doing timed exclusivity and all that stuff. And yeah, I get it. It makes sense why people would lose it. Well, it turns out there is no PlayStation exclusivity period. There's no deal in place. It's just technical issues. And I saw a lot of people lose their absolute marbles online before it was announced it was a tech issue. Because Baldur's Gate 3 is going to be a big deal. It's a beautiful RPG. You can actually play the game in third person if you want. A lot of people don't know that. It just looks like a top-down CRPG. But you can actually play over the shoulder if you want. Very cool to see a CRPG do that. Helps with immersion for most people, I think. But yeah, everyone lost their marbles. Went back crap crazy online. And it's just a tech issue. Logan, you must have seen the turmoil online about it.
Yeah, I'll admit my first thought when I saw it announced at the PlayStation event was, all right, here we go again. And especially when I didn't see Xbox listed as a platform, I'm like, okay, they've pulled a fast one again. There's it's gonna be a money hat, a timed exclusive. See it in a few months or a year, if at all, because you know how these things go. But then lo and behold, they had a community post on Reddit and were like, Hey guys, we see a lot of people are upset and wondering, where in the choose your word is the game for Xbox and this and that. And they were like, relax. There is no exclusivity deal for it. We control it, and frankly, it's just not ready yet. We just didn't feel like announcing it because it wasn't ready yet. We didn't want to make it sound like something we couldn't deliver for whatever reason, but it's in the works. We're having some issues with the local co-op, which is important to us to get right. So it's going to take a little while, but it is coming. So yes, there is an Xbox version in the works. Relax. So that was a huge relief to me because I'm looking forward to it. I love Baldur's Gate. It's a great series. And RPGs in general. Larian is a great studio. Like them and CD Red are like two of the premier, basically independent RPG makers now, with Bethesda and Obsidian under Xbox. So, along with In Exile. So to me it's a big deal that it's coming to the platform. I can wait a little bit now that I know it's for sure coming. No problem to me. Get it done right, and it just shows. I know we get tired of the ABK deal, but it just shows the irony of a game is announced and everybody just assumes it's been money hatted or it's an exclusive for PlayStation because of their history of how they do things. And yet they absolutely lose their mind if Xbox does anything, even if they're upfront about we are not doing it this way, we are doing it this way, and they still it was really eye opening and revealing about how people handled this compared to some other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I've had my eyes on this game for a long time. Like, it's been in development for I think like 5 years. It was announced a long time ago, but the detail in this like RPG world they've made, and like how long's it been since Baldur's Gate 2? I think it's been like 25 years or something.
OG Xbox.
Like OG Xbox, that's been like a long time, and a long time in the making. They are one of the biggest CRPG studios. Again, you can play it in third person if you want, and it looks really good. There's that much detail in the world. Um, oh crap, hold on. Okay, audio went there. 1 second. Okay, we're back. Let me know if audio's fine in chat. YouTube is just terrible today. Um, okay, 1 second. Honestly, sometimes I can't stand YouTube. Just like it drops all the time. But please let me know in chat if the audio's coming through fine and all that stuff. But yeah, it's kind of weird because this RPG's been in development for so long. People automatically assumed that it was just going to be exclusive to PlayStation, and all of this hate, by the way, went to the Series S, and wow, like I have never seen so much hate for the S than the past week. But people are automatically blaming the S for some reason, even though the developer never mentioned the S. When trolls online were saying it was the S, one of the lead developers behind the game kept on saying there's nothing wrong with the S. It's just issues with the split screen and all that stuff. And you have to realize Baldur's Gate 3 is going to run on PCs that are less powerful than the S. Like console games are more optimized for the hardware because there's less of it. So like people need to chill on the S. I don't know why the hate for the S sprouted, by the way. Is it because Microsoft has a cheap way into the generation? Is it because it just offers a different way of play? Logan, you have to admit the hate for the S is a bit weird.
Yeah, kind of all started back ironically enough to id Software devs, I think, but right before the acquisition of Bethesda, had posted something about the S, and there were some grumblings about development for the S, and then since then, like, you haven't heard from that camp obviously, but like people from outside the Xbox ecosystem in particular hone in on the S because unlike PlayStation, Xbox has two SKUs. You know, you've got the Series X and the Series S, which offers more options and price, availability, size. Like if you live in a smaller place or you want something to take on the go and attach a screen to, Series S is your option. And it's more choice at the end of the day. So the fact it gets so much hate, it gets called the potato console and all that, that just seems kind of snobbish and kind of well, a little uneducated, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I know people with the S, they've praised the thing. I know people that have upgraded to a Series X because they want a disk drive and all that stuff, and the 4K stuff. But like, the Series S is a marginally better console than the One X. The One X just has a stronger GPU, but the CPU in the Series S is a monster. There's a bunch of games that run at 120 frames per second. You can play Call of Duty at 120 frames per second, and people like to joke that it's like 400p, and it's like that's just not the case. Like if you look on Steam at what hardware people have, most gamers are gaming on hardware that are nowhere near as good as the Series S. Yet people are still playing modern games, modern AAA games on that hardware. So it's just a weird situation. And I think developers need to just take more time in optimizing games. Like Baldur's Gate 3 has no release date on Xbox. In my opinion, I'd like them to have the console versions down first and then announce the date. It may still release in August. We just don't know. If they finish the port in the next few weeks, then they'll update the artwork. But like people just need to chill. Like the Series S is a powerful console for its size. And yeah, I think it's just another reason for people to hate. Like if Microsoft released we will know next generation, by the way, if the 2 SKU console actually works. Because it's selling well. It's sold really well in Japan. It's still selling well in Japan. It's a cheap entry point at the next generation. It's bundled in some countries with multiple months of Xbox Game Pass and all that stuff. There's Forza bundles. And if next generation Microsoft come out with 2 consoles again, then we'll know, it's a definite success. Because I've only seen one developer complain about the Series S, and that wasn't even a developer. That was an artist. So, yeah, I think people need to chill on that. Baldur's Gate 3, it'll probably come in the same month as August as the other consoles as well. Anyway, we'll move on. Let me find the comments. Soren X said that Paradox is having an event hosted by Xbox next week. 3 games will be announced. Now, I'm not entirely familiar with Paradox's games. Logan, I know you are, right?
Yeah, Paradox makes some good RTS games, and they were the ones who were going to make the Vampire Masquerade. That is currently in development purgatory right now.
Okay, I would love to see that game again. It was basically, first-person RPG, but set in, Seattle, modern-day Seattle. But you play as a vampire. I loved the way it looked. Like you said, it's in purgatory. I hope that's it's been a long time in the making. It's been, I think, like 20 years since the first one. I know the first one actually launched, I think it was the same day as Half-Life. Ouch.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, so it's been a while, but I'd love to see that again at some point. I would love more RTS games on console. Thankfully, Age of Empires 2 is doing really well on Xbox, at least in the UK anyway. I hope we'll see more stuff like that. It could be a cool event, but I'll post about that next week as well because we'll have the show out just afterwards. Okay, so UK games media against Xbox. Logan, this was your topic because this past week's been weird. We've had multiple people in the industry say that if the Activision deal does not go through, Microsoft is going to sell off Xbox. Now, as someone that's been gaming on Xbox for 20 plus years, and I've been following games media for over 20 plus years, I can tell you this. this has gone out every few years about Xbox. People have always said that, oh, Xbox is going to be sold off. Remember 10 years ago, Microsoft was going to sell Xbox off to Amazon. Never happened. They were going to sell it off to Apple. Never happened. And even during the height of the 360 generation, where there were like 80 plus million consoles sold, people were still running with the Xbox division is going to be sold. And now you have Xbox as a division. They make more money than Bing and Surface, two profitable divisions for Microsoft. And people think they're going to sell them off. And these are industry people, right? I'm a smaller creator. I'm trying to get up there. But these are industry people who get paid to talk about these things, posting things like, oh, they've heard from people in the industry that, Microsoft's going to sell off Xbox. That's bullcrap. It's not happening. It's never happened. People run with this stuff every other year. And, I just feel like I'm aging slowly every single time this comes up. Like, it's been going on for years. Microsoft isn't good. Like, I put it like this. I'm a fan of Microsoft's products, Xbox and Windows. I use Windows every day. I use Xbox every day. But they've shut down projects that don't make money. Remember Zune? They arguably made, at one point, a better iPod than Apple. They shut it down. Windows 8 RT was shut down. Their cheaper tablets with the less powerful Windows option, that was shut down. And they've shut down a bunch of stuff that doesn't make money. Xbox is still here. It's still here 20 years later. And people are still making up this whole it's going to be sold off thing. Logan, what's your thought on this? Because it was your idea to talk about this, and I'm just fed up with... It's UK gamers made it in general, basically.
Yeah, it is bizarre. I mean, like we've talked ad nauseum on the show in the past about how certain outlets kind of have more of a skew towards one side or another, which it's their prerogative. Whoever writes there, yada yada yada. But at the same time, you can't claim to do one thing and then continually put things out there that kind of show something else, and it's weird, and it it really went to a head this week. Some folks would put out stuff and then people would be like, hey man, I don't think there's any way that's accurate or that's right, or where'd you get that, or did you not even listen to this, or do you even know how this legal system works, or like, so you're basically saying that Phil went out there and he said this thing verbatim, and then you're throwing a whole bunch of doubt on it immediately after the person who's in charge of the entire thing just flat out said it's fine, everything's good, and there's no reason not to trust him and his word. Now, you can say Xbox has made some mistakes under Phil Spencer, which they have, but for the vast majority of the things they've done have been very good. And he's a guy who strikes me as incredibly truthful and honest. He does not strike me as a guy who would go up there and just basically say something and then like the house is actually on fire behind him. And he's like, "Oh, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. We're gonna be here. That we have support. There's nothing going on. It's fine." No, if he says something, I truly believe he means it. And so that there was that, and then just like comparing. I know politics is not something we talk about on here, so I'll just be incredibly vague. But just like comparing politics of one country to another and trying to compare to certain people who followed certain groups to others and to a game company and trying to make it some kind of spiel that was completely out of context and not even applicable to the situation or gamers and execs of the company was just not great optics. And people got fed up with it, and I don't know why, but it seems like it's reached a point where the Xbox fan base has kind of had enough. And so, like, if they see something, they go after it like a dog on a bone. So it seems like in particular it's been coming from across the pond lately. Like, we absolutely have U.S. outlets here that have some just junk that comes out, and we go, "Oh my word, did you really put that out there?" Like, what? Who do you think you are? But it just seems like as the CMA um, hearings have picked up and the EU, cases being further delved into, that the European outlets in particular have been in the spotlight lately. They've been throwing out some stuff that frankly is stoking some emotions that maybe they did not want to.
Yeah, I mean, it's UK games media. They have this thing with the like negative articles make money because you have all the people going there that don't like Xbox, right? And you have all the people that do like Xbox that are trying to defend the situation. And in the end, that website just gets clicks. Like, I have not used mainstream UK games media in about 10 years. Like, I got fed up in 2013. So, like, the media I support in the UK is Windows Central because they literally just post news. They don't post opinion pieces based on crap. They post news. Like, the Metro in the UK is one of the clickbaitiest sites ever, and they will run with a fan opinion and run it as an article. Someone wrote that Microsoft should sell off Xbox to PlayStation, and they printed that. It's ridiculous, and it's been going on for years. The UK games media is predominantly toxic. During the Xbox 360 generation, when Microsoft is like number one, they didn't actually hate on PlayStation as much because PlayStation, for some reason, gets this love. And it occurred to me a while back that, let's go back 20 years ago. You had Nintendo, Sega, and PlayStation all doing their thing. Sega was not doing so well because the Dreamcast didn't do that good. But Nintendo, they were doing really well. PlayStation was like a giant at the time. I think the reason we see so much negativity by journalists is because there's gamers like us and people listening. Let me know if you like me, if you're listening, people. That you gamed on PlayStation, you gamed on Nintendo, but when the Xbox came out, you picked up that Jupiter-sized controller and felt those sticks that were just off-center, and you began to have a preference for it. You began to have a preference for Halo, Fable, Knights of the Old Republic, all the different hardcore franchises that were going on the original Xbox. That drew people in. Xbox Live with the bright orange, headset pack thing. That drew people like me. Like, I was a PlayStation fan in the 90s as a kid. Like, I love PlayStation. But I switched to Xbox, and then I went to the 360 and all that stuff. And I think, there's millions of people like me who switched from PlayStation to Xbox. But I think I genuinely think these articles by these journalists, they didn't change their preference at all. They got their PlayStation as a kid. They got a PlayStation 2, and then they bought the bloody £650 Blu-ray player PS3 fat, right? And they kept on going with it. Because whenever I see these people who have a preference for PlayStation and they are journalists, they do nothing but snark online to bash Xbox. There was a journalist for some site. He was talking about a while ago how the only reason he gives his kid an Xbox controller is so he can use it as a pacifier, right? Stuff like that. And it's always these PlayStation-centric journalists. But there's people like me. I'm not a journalist. Like, I changed my preference. Like, you can outgrow things. Doesn't make them childish. Like, I outgrew PlayStation. Right? I used to game portably. I used to put time into Game Boy. I got a PSP back in the day, but I just stopped playing handheld mode games. I just outgrew it. Not me anymore. I used to like Foster's, the lager. I outgrew it. I'm now a Strongbow drinker. You can outgrow things without them being childish, and it's like, I think these journalists, they just saw in with the whole PlayStation thing. They just didn't outgrow it. They didn't change their preference over time. And now, 20 years later, they still have this, shaking their fist at the sky thing, hoping for Xbox to fail because, in the end, they would just get screwed over. Video games would go up to £90 because nobody else could play them anywhere else. And it's just, like, Logan, do I have any, am I making sense? Because these journalists always have this preference for PlayStation.
Yeah, I think you're hitting the nail on the head that folks grew up with the PS1 and kind of just stayed with the ecosystem. And like, I'll be honest, like I grew up Nintendo and I had a PS2 before I had an Xbox. And then, I got into Xbox and I loved it and I've stuck with Xbox. But I also have, because Nintendo was my first one and I grew up with Mario and Zelda, Metroid, all that. I have a close affinity for Nintendo, especially Pokemon, and Sony I buy for exclusives. Like I buy the PlayStation consoles every time they come out, so I can play a few of the titles that only go there because I enjoy the sad dad narrative games from time to time. But in general, Xbox is, my preference. And I think it's just kind of the opposite for a lot of these journalists have grown up with that, especially in the UK, where Sony was king for a long time and kind of is right now again. But that they're kind of hardwired that way. And, that's okay. It happens. Everybody has their preferences. It's just when it becomes a detractor from being fair that it's a problem. Like when it's, like it doesn't matter if something horrible happens if it's one doing it, but if the other does it, then all we're automatically jumping on it or running with it. Or if one does something, cool and the other one doesn't, then we're just going to ignore it. And just this overall news cycle of how things get handled and portrayed and construed and focused on versus swept under their rug is it's become apparent at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, like I honestly think people should just ignore UK games media. Like you do have Windows Central, although they have a US office as well. But like Windows Central, as much as they are an Xbox centric, website, because Microsoft, they are actually honest. They'll say if a game is bad. They'll say if something's good. They'll tell you what Xbox needs, and it's like the reason I don't follow, GameSpot or, videogames.co.uk, or any of those UK outlets, is because it's just all clickbait. It's all negativity. Like, even back when the Wii was getting nothing but casual titles and all these, like, rip-off games, the UK games media didn't go in on them like they are now with Xbox. And it's going on for years. It's like, they just wishing for Xbox to fail for some reason, because it blows my mind. The CMA, they defending this Japanese company, because they need to be protected. I've seen some people in the games media who I won't mention, have acted like Sony is now this mom and pop, tiny small business.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, like I burst out laughing. It's like Sony is like they worth like almost $100 billion. They aren't a tiny company, right? They aren't some little tiny shop on the corner of a street selling pasties. They are a huge company, and just saying Sony referred to as a small business, like come on, really? Like Sony's worth the amount of like a small country, right? They're gonna be fine. But to see media talk about Sony that way, it just shows how much they love Sony for some reason. They just never change preference, and they're unwilling to admit that, look, PlayStation essentially killed Sega with the Dreamcast and how all that stuff went on. Their marketing was pretty much like what Samsung does with Apple stuff. Like, Samsung always takes the mick out of, Apple. And, like, Sony's, like, marketing for years has been about crushing the competition. Like, to this day, I'm 99% sure that people don't want Sony to have competition. It's been going on for years, and it's just very obvious at this point. Anyway, we'll move on. Again, UK games media is just terrible, like awful. The fact that they get away with that clickbait stuff, it's just stupid. I'm surprised it's even legal to be like that dishonest. It's stupid. And by the way, one of those people that said, Xbox is going to be sold off, locked their account, protected it from, not being harassed or whatever. And I said, like, grow a spine, man. If people have been following me on Twitter for over 5 years or 4 years, you may have known that there was a time I was harassed by a group of people daily with disgusting stuff. And it's like, if you give in, you're not going to do anything. It's like giving it to people, because people are genuinely asking who's these prominent people in the industry that's saying Xbox is going to fail, and he couldn't name any. They were probably Sony favorite analysts. Let's face it. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay. All right. This wasn't a topic, but we'll talk about it quick. The Outer Worlds Spaces Choice Edition is coming out next month.
Very good.
And, it's going to have all DLC, all 3 expansions. It's going to have, 4K, 60 FPS, basically what you have now, but it also has enhanced graphics. And the trailer actually shows the difference, which I was actually surprised. And people have been asking me online what's with the Game Pass situation. So, The Outer Worlds is in Game Pass. This game will not be in Game Pass. There is an upgrade fee for people that own it. I think it's $9. I'm not entirely sure. It's somewhere around there. But if you own the game with all DLC, you get the $9 upgrade. If you own it on Game Pass, it doesn't count. It's because it's a Private Division game. Private Division owns the rights to publishing the first game, so no upgrade fee, none of that stuff. You have to buy the game outright. I can't imagine the game being expensive. It's not available for pre-order yet in the UK, so I'm not entirely sure. But if you like The Outer Worlds, it's probably going to be an option. It may have a different set of achievements, which I know people really like. But as of now, no UK pre-order. But yeah, honestly, I think the upgrade looked good. What do you think, Logan?
Yeah, I'm really happy for it. Outer Worlds is one of my favorite new IP of last generation. I love Obsidian and I adore the Outer Worlds. I can't wait for the second one. I'm definitely gonna jump in for the Spacer's Choice edition. And kind of like a side note, basically they're kind of doing it like, uh, there's been like 200 ports of Skyrim, but that the latest one was like the legendary or like the anniversary edition where there's like a $10 upgrade. It's basically like that, but they're also not only are there enhanced visuals, but they are increasing the level cap as well for the Spacer's Choice edition. So that's yet another reason to get it. So expand your characters' abilities a little bit more.
That's fair. I mean, all the time we see Game of the Year editions launch all the time, and this is kind of just that. Just 3-4 years later. But yeah, it looks like it's going to be a good pickup, especially if you've never played the game before. I never played the expansions, so I might just pick this up anyway. Again, it's probably not going to be expensive. And the sequel is going to be an Xbox exclusive, so that'll probably drive people over. I don't think it'll be that long till we see the sequel show up again. But yeah, it looks like it'll be worth the money. The upgrade in visuals is definitely it's a big upgrade. I think it sold over 5 million copies, which is big for a new IP, especially an RPG developed by a tiny team. So yeah, there's that. Yeah, we'll move on. Okay, so the Phil Spencer interview that went live today, it's about 20 minutes long, and he went in depth about a lot of stuff. Start talking about the Activision deal, about exclusivity when it comes to Starfield, and honestly, I think people should be fairly happy with this interview because he talked about how exclusives mean a lot, right? Exclusives bring gamers to your platform. Like I've seen Xbox gamers kind of annoyed that Activision things will be multi-platform, but they only talk about Call of Duty, by the way, when they talk about multi-platform Activision games. Starfield was going to be an Xbox exclusive since they bought them. That hasn't changed. And Microsoft know that they need exclusive titles on their platform to drive gamers over. So while you do have Minecraft that's on everything, and you have Minecraft Legends that's going to be on multiple devices, Call of Duty is going to be on everything. They're going to bring it to Nintendo devices. Things like Starfield, your HellBlade 2 and that, yeah, it's exclusive. I just don't like the hypocrisy in people. Like I've seen people today, and I don't want to say the name, but if you've been on Twitter, you know what I'm talking about. There's people complaining and saying Phil Spencer's a hypocrite because they're going to have exclusives. So it's okay for Sony to have all sorts of exclusives, and then money had to third-party games, but Microsoft buy a studio, multiple studios, and they can't have their games exclusive, like Starfield, Redfall, HellBlade 2, Project Mara, The Outer Worlds 2, the list goes on. And it's like, that's silly. PlayStation will, like, we've talked about this before. There's a rumor that's been going around for about a year and a half now that the next BioShock game is exclusive to PlayStation for a year. The outcry when that's announced, if it's announced, it's going to be horrible online. It's going to be a bloodbath in the Twitter sphere. But like, Logan, I thought it was a pretty good interview, and it kind of settled kind of what everyone was expecting him to say, but like solidified it, because Activision stuff like Call of Duty, multi-platform, Starfield, exclusive, Elder Scrolls, exclusive.
Yeah, I thought it was a good interview. He covered like a whole bunch of stuff. Like it was with Xbox UK, so he talked, of course, about the local studios in the UK, like Ninja Theory in Cambridge, and then Rare where they're at, and some other ones, and what they're specifically focused on. And then he talked about Tango, GameWorks, and Hi-Fi Rush, and how that was a massive success, and they're thrilled with it. And he wished um, Shinji Mikami well on his next steps, whatever he decides to do, and said he learned a lot from him about what to do with Japan going forward and how to grow Tango to be even better with new leadership, whoever steps up there. Didn't announce who would be in charge yet. Um, Talked about the ABK deal, of course. You could tell Phil like he almost wants to like throw a brick through TV when he hears the word COD anymore. It's like PTSD at this point.
Yeah.
Like he's been asked about it so many times, and you could tell he kind of he had a look for a minute. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I have to talk about this again." But he was courteous and nice, and he was like, "Yeah, we're not gonna do anything sketchy or untoward about it. We said it's gonna be multi-plat. It's gonna be multi-plat, and we're not." It's like, actually, there is a popular game out there right now. Hogwarts Legacy that has a PlayStation
Yeah.
exclusive quest and stuff, and we're not gonna do that. He said we don't believe in doing that, and he specifically mentioned missions and skin packs or modes, which is a not so subtle reference to the PlayStation method of exclusive COD content. They have so many skins, or oh, you get this mode in our Call of Duty experience, or you get it a month early compared to the other users. He's like, we're not gonna do anything like that. We have it in writing. It'll be 100% parity across all platforms, and there's not gonna be hidden content or exclusive content for one platform or the other on this title franchise. Like Call of Duty will be Call of Duty, period, for everybody. The end. End of story. We're done. Move along. So he addressed that, and he addressed the idea that he somehow had misled people about Starfield, because there had been this little weird fanboy narrative. Even the FTC had implied that they had said one thing about exclusivity and done the other, but then he came out and said, I never said that, period. He said, he's like, I have a good memory, and I don't recall ever saying that, but what I said is we would look at games on a case-by-case basis, and then games that are on an existing platform will not be removed, and we will continue updating and giving new content to games that continually exist. And then as far as Starfield, he said exclusives do matter. They're a marketing big thing for a platform, so we will have exclusives. It's not everything we're going to do, but there will be some exclusives, and Starfield was one of those. And he said, but the idea that he pulled a fast one and made it sound like he would give everybody Starfield and then, haha, psych suckers, and he took it. No. He said he never did that, and that was never the intention, and he's not sure where that came from. But he put that to bed and talked about there's a bunch of other franchises and things in Activision Blizzard that they want to revisit. Like, he he talked specifically about giving these studios creative freedom to do what they want, which is, a subtle reference to the COD Mines memes about all these studios have been slaving away on Call of Duty. Even Toys for Bob, who does Crash Bandicoot, has been doing some Call of Duty. Like, I would guess that's probably not their preferred thing. I don't know, but so I reckon this deal would help everybody. So he just talked about all that. Going forward, that mobile was the primary reason they jumped at this deal, along with all these IPs. But Call of Duty was never the primary focus, and the fact that it has become the primary focus has been exhausting for everyone, basically.
Yeah, I mean, the interview was pretty much like cut and dry. We know what's exclusive and what isn't, and the whole Starfield thing, right? Do we, you know how like Starfield was never promised to be multi-platform because we would have seen receipts already. Like people are willing to like post receipts of anything as proof, yet we haven't seen a single tweet, a single post, blog article, anything regarding to Starfield being multi-platform when the Bethesda deal was done. People are just making it up. It makes no sense. And Bethesda's had like long ties with Microsoft for 20 years now, ever since Morrowind on the original Xbox. Like they are an organic fit. But yeah, although I will say this: if anyone from Ninja Theory is listening, I'm willing to hop on a train just to go to your little pub and do an interview. Because they have a little pub inside of Ninja Theory, and it looks nice. But yeah, Phil Spencer's visiting UK studios, so they have Rare, Playground Games, and Ninja Theory, and that kind of leads in with what I'm going to talk about next, HellBlade 2. There's been rumors going about for the past 2 months that HellBlade will be coming out later this year, and the reason why I 100% believe that's going to happen, I think we will see it launching between September in November, is that the game was announced with the Xbox Series X with in December 2019, and we didn't see anything for a while, and then we got gameplay at the Game Awards 2021 in December, and it's been over a year. Well, in the UK, offices around the country had to shut down during COVID, so most of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, they literally couldn't film any motion capture stuff at all. So all the work they did was in-game, at home, no motion capture stuff. So basically, they've only been able to develop the game properly for about the past year and a half back in the studio. So some people have messaged me saying, "Is the game cancelled?" They literally couldn't make the game. Like, if you've played the first HellBlade game, you know there's a crap ton of motion capture in that game. Well, they have their own motion capture studio now, where they can get things done, and they don't have to rent out an office down the street like they used to, but they have their own space. So I do think, 100%, I will eat an entire block of cheese, which will mess me up, that this game will launch this year. 100%. Oh, we have another super chat by SorenX357. Thank you very much. You're awesome. Great talk, chat. Thank you very much. Do you know what I have to say? I partake and listen to a lot of podcasts. I have to say this chat has to be one of the best. Very chill. No porn bots for the fifth show in the row or something, which is very cool. Everyone in this chat is super awesome. Thank you very much for the super chat, SorenX. But yeah, Ninja Theory, they've gotten full back to work. Working from home is a thing that you can still do now in the UK. But for the most part, offices are open. So it's been long enough. It's been enough years. Logan, do you think we will see HellBlade this year like the rumors suggest?
If I had to make a bet, I would say I think we will see HellBlade 2 release later this year, like October, December, somewhere in that range. Like, I just feel it's time, like you. And like you mentioned, like, I think this game would have come out a year or two ago had, COVID not happened, because they were literally shuttered where they couldn't do a huge part of their game. Like, right up there with Sony Santa Monica and Naughty Dog, Ninja Theory, like, those are three preeminent motion capture, lifelike visuals, just fidelity, fluidity of movement, just full on like immersive acting, like pristine. So the fact that they couldn't do what is a massive part of their game, of course, it delayed it for a while. But the fact that they've been able to do it again, I'm sure that they weren't just sitting at home twiddling their thumbs. I bet they were doing other parts of the games to work around that. And now that they can get to the meat and potatoes of the game, I'm I feel confident we it will be out this year. If not this year, then early next year. Like I'm calling it either October to December this year or quarter 1 next year. I think it will be much sooner than later for Hellblade 2.
Yeah, I don't think it's that far off. Like if we didn't have the pandemic or all that stuff, like we would have had a ton of releases already. And also by like Hogwarts Legacy would have shipped last year. Gotham Knights would have released in 2020 because the pandemic really affected that. You know, Suicide Squad would be out already. Like most of the games we're looking forward to in the next few months would be out. you know, just the pushback because of the pandemic, working from home, and just put everything, especially UK studios, were really hit by it. Because again, offices couldn't open until like March 2021, so no motion capture. But like I was saying, they have their own motion capture studio now. They can get work done. You know, I know Naughty Dog. I think they used to rent out space in Hollywood for their motion capture, but I think they have their own space now. But I think most of these studios really need to get their own motion capture studio, especially with modern tech and facial animations and full body tracking. Like it makes more sense for studios to have that now. But yeah, it looks like we might see it later this year, or at least early next year. And let's talk about Starfield. Now, there was kind of a date leak. I think it was on the Epic Game Store where the June release date came out, and people have been wondering, is it real? Is it fake? And we are rumored to be getting. Well, we know for a fact we are getting a Hellblade. Can't speak. We're getting a Starfield event, its own Starfield event at some point, not that far away. And if the game was to release in June, they need a couple of months to market the thing. Because even though this game is going to be launching in Game Pass, it's going to sell millions. And Microsoft, like if you look at all their advertisements on TV for video games, while they do say, it's in Game Pass, they make sure you can go out and buy it. Because people will still go out and buy those games. And it looks like we could be having a Starfield announcement show this week. Because, again, it's going to be one of the biggest games of the year. They need time to market the thing. It's going to be marketed on TV and YouTube a lot, about a month and a half up until release. And the reason why I believe the June release date, by the way, is because when it comes to big launches, Bethesda doesn't really like to do a long marketing cycle. Skyrim was announced in, I think it was the December of 2010. We got the E3 showcase in June 2011. We got I think it was like 15 minutes of gameplay, and then it released in the November. And then with Fallout 3, the game was announced in May. We saw about 10 minutes of gameplay in the June, and the game released in October. So, like, even though there is like 4 or 5 months in between an announcement and the game releasing, these companies don't want to spend 6 months advertising a game. That's why you see a big game like, God of War or, Forza or something. You get a month of advertising. Absolutely solid advertising, millions spent. But before that, you don't really see it. Hogwarts Legacy is going to be the biggest game of the year, probably. It had 1 month of marketing up until launch. Outside of that, they just had the Twitter account posting, memes and like little bits of music and that. So I think it won't be that far off. Logan, what's your thoughts on this? Because the June thing could be likely, considering Bethesda doesn't like to do the long draws between announcement and release anymore.
Yeah, the June date feels pretty good to me. Or maybe August or September, but I feel like the summer, like Starfield is going to be an experience. Like, obviously every game is an experience. But like, I'm not being facetious. I'm just saying like it will be like a huge cultural moment for Starfield, like the old Hollywood blockbuster, like when Star Wars would come to theater, or Jaws, or Alien, or like these huge marquee moments. Starfield is gearing up and has been geared and pushed and labeled like it is going to be one of those type of games moments in the industry. So I think the summer blockbuster slot makes perfect sense, and especially with the June E3 or not E3, depending on what you want to call it or what where they end up doing their show at. But that summer slot feels like the right spot for Starfield, and I'm looking forward to it. And no, I do not feel like Bethesda has lost creative touch with what makes a Bethesda game a Bethesda game. I saw that floating around the other day, and I about lost my mind at that.
Yeah, I had a. By the way, if people heard me coughing in the background, I accidentally inhaled some water. Excuse me. Um, yeah, I mean, people were replying to a post I made the other day about Starfield, saying that it's not going to be an RPG. Like, in what universe do you see 10 minutes of Starfield gameplay and go, you know what, that's not an RPG? Like, it's blatantly an RPG. You make a character, there's a billion different kinds of perk systems, character progression via, attribute points. Like, it's very much a Bethesda RPG. If you like Skyrim and Fallout, you're going to feel at home with this one. Excuse me. But yeah, I think it's going to release soon. And plus, we always used to get all these big games releasing at the end of the year. They need to be spaced out. Like, you don't need, like, if you look at it in modern releases, games either release at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year. Like, from January till April, it's kind of packs. The end of the year is always packs. So releasing in summer makes sense. Games like The Witcher 3, Batman Arkham Knight had summer releases, and it worked out pretty well for them. So, yeah, we could be seeing the event announced this week. So, pretty early days. Microsoft tends to do big news for some reason at like 2 p.m. in the UK on Wednesdays. So, maybe we'll see something tomorrow. But again, June release is the rumor. And speaking of Starfield, before I move on, I have a video coming out in the next week because I have a bunch of unreleased details about Starfield. A lot of interesting details about Starfield. Should be coming out maybe next Wednesday. Anyway, I want to end the show on this topic because it kind of really annoyed me. Jeff Keighley. So the other day...
Is it going to be 70?
Yeah. Jeff Keighley basically the other day was kind of gloating about the demise of E3. And that kind of struck me the wrong way. E3's been a prominent part of the gaming sphere for decades now. It used to be a trade show for developers and retailers, but it became a gamer-centric thing. It's been a gamer-centric thing since, I want to say, 2007. Because before it used to be places like, Game or GameStop. Used to go there and find out about upcoming games for the next year so they can get different amount of stock, all that stuff, different interest, marketing materials, all that stuff. It's been a gaming show for a long time now. And it's always been the summer event we all look forward to. It's the WrestleMania of gaming. And I've noticed that, when Sony pulled out of doing a show in 2019, nothing else changed. Just Sony didn't show up. And then in 2020, at the beginning of the year, Sony said, we aren't doing a show. And then immediately, Jeff Keighley said, yeah, I'm not doing an E3 showcase where he, talks over the shows and that because it doesn't feel right. And bear in mind, this was pre-pandemic. The pandemic hadn't affected anything yet. We were going to get a Warner Brothers event that year. And, the pandemic happened. Obviously, it's still going on to this day, but not to that extent. And basically, we're finally getting to a point where going to E3 in person will be a thing again. Jeff Keighley has been gloating that all these companies have been pulling out. Microsoft isn't going as far as we know. Nintendo isn't going. Sony isn't going. And just to see the gloating of something as good as E3, like, we all look forward to E3 every single year because it's gamer centric. You know, people that go there, meet up, speak to people you've been talking to online for years and whatever, you know, play games that's about to release. And it feels like, you know, if you take that away, you're really messing with gaming and it's not the same. Because, look, what's more entertaining, E3 or watching Jeff Keighley have his own thing for 4 months? Like, remember 2020 when we had to watch people talk from webcams? It was pretty
hideous.
yeah, it was depressing. And then you fast forward a few months, companies were getting it together and making more produced shows from home. Okay, makes sense. You skip forward to 2021. People were doing their own shows. Microsoft did their own digital showcase. I thought it was really well produced. But Jeff Keighley doing his own things, trying to get game announcements for his show. And by the way, I have respect for Jeff Keighley. I think what he's done with the Game Awards is great. Right? It's came a long way over the past 10 years. You know, I remember, I think it was like 2009 that you had porn stars announcing awards and stuff. And it's came a long show. It's a prestigious game show event. But it's like, I get the feeling he wants to be the face of gaming. And I got this impression last year where there was this thing called Jeff Keighley Presents Summer Games Fest Live Gamescom opening night, and I kind of just tilted my head like a dog, thinking, why is Jeff Keighley doing an opening night live show for a German show? But he's in LA doing this digital showcase, announcing new games, but it's Gamescom, remember? It's Gamescom, but he's doing this in LA. That just blew my mind. Like, why does Logan, do I have a point? Like, Jeff Keighley has to be the face of gaming.
It is certainly interesting how it has gone from, becoming, associated with E3, and then over the years starting his own game show, and then the Game Awards, and then, Summer's Games Fest to now opening night live at Gamescom, and it's him everywhere. Like, it's just, I don't know, sometimes you talk about oversaturation where you're just like, all right, I like you, but I'm starting to see you everywhere now. It's kind of, it kind of gets to that point a little bit. Like, you can like something and enjoy something, but then even, moderation is good. And it feels like it's become a cognitive push to kind of become a focus, even more than just the games industry. And he has done a lot of good for the industry. I applaud him for that and what he's done to help people and to spotlight some devs that probably wouldn't get attention otherwise and other things. But it just seems like maybe there's a balance somewhere where some other people can try to do game stuff as well, or these companies can step up, or they can just do it in a slightly different way. It has kind of become heliocentric around him a little bit.
Because think about it like this, E3, you have this fan-centric event where fans watch from around the world, or they go there, and we get to experience these new games being announced. But think about it like this, Jeff Keighley's Summer Game Fest, who actually benefits? Like, he gets the advertising revenue from those, live shows, from hundreds of thousands of people watching. Gamers don't get anything in return. We get a new show spread over 4 weeks, months. Remember Summer Games Fest in 2020 where, yeah, it was granted it was from home, understandable, but it was literally Jeff Keighley talking before announcing the showcase by Microsoft or PlayStation or EA. He didn't actually put on a show. It was just him talking in front of a camera and then saying, this is Summer Game Fest, and then just saying, hey, Ubisoft show in an hour that they're doing in France, that's part of Summer Games Fest, where it would just be playing the link of Ubisoft show. It's like I could do that. I'm using OBS right now to broadcast gameplay while we talk. Literally, that's all I'd have to do. And he was doing that. And it's like, gamers don't get anything from this. It's gone from E3 being a gamer-centric event to now Jeff Keighley announcing games and being the face of gaming. Again, I respect the dude, what he did for, the Game Awards and stuff and how far it's come. Granted, it does have a lot of ads and, a lot of awards are announced off stage, which is weird because it's an award show. But yeah, just when I saw like Gamescom open a night live, it's like, dude, you aren't in Cologne. You aren't in Germany talking about this stuff and announcing things in Germany. It's like, no, you're in a Hollywood studio announcing games that were meant to be the German show. It just blew my mind. It's like, why can't these shows be their own thing? Because Gamescom is a huge German show. It's absolutely huge. Over like 300,000 people usually attend. It's like, oh no, we can't have the announcements on stage there now. They have to be online in an LA show. It just mind boggles me, man. Like, I don't get it. And he gloats whenever E3 and its quote unquote demise is a thing. Ubisoft's going to E3 this year, thankfully, where we will be seeing, Assassin's Creed Mirage and a bunch of stuff. By the way,
Sam Fisher skins.
Yeah, Sam Fisher skins. By the way, do you know there's more than 5 Assassin's Creed games in development? Now, as an Assassin's Creed fan, I quite like the idea of that, and they are going to be different experiences, and we're going to see some traditional stuff. But Ubisoft's going to be at E3. I think. Konami's going to be at E3 this year, which we're going to see Metal Gear stuff, by the way. Hint, hint, it's probably going to be a 4K 60 port of the HD collection, but we're going to be getting the first Metal Gear game, the rumor, on Xbox as well. We've never seen the first Metal Gear game on Xbox, so I will still port beg Metal Gear 4. That's a topic for a different day. But I think we need E3 to return. Like, there's nothing like E3. Like, think about it like this. We had our first console generation in decades without any E3 hype. Like, if you own an Xbox and a PlayStation, Xbox Series XS or PlayStation 5, you have to admit, it wasn't as good not having that E3 showcase, in person where you see all these people do interviews, talk about upcoming games and features. It's like, no, we were all sitting at home, depressed because you couldn't leave the bloody house or you'd get the Rona, and we had new consoles come out. Great, granted, the cool consoles, we have some awesome games, but 2020's console launch just was not the same as the Xbox 360 or even the Xbox One. Granted, there was no drama like last time, but yeah, Logan, you have to admit, like, it wasn't the same.
Yeah, this console launch was. I mean, you hate to use the term kind of buzzkill a little bit, but it was basically a BC machine for me for a while. But like, I was just playing stuff I was already playing. There wasn't too much that was next gen only out for months, if not almost a year, till there's like major titles. Because Halo was delayed, and well, frankly, probably should have been delayed a whole nother year. But that's another topic. But like, there was a whole bunch of just like, we got to get the console out there, so we'll get it out there. And then everybody and their dogs clawing for one, and there's only so many of them available, and all the bots are getting them and selling them for outrageous prices on eBay. And if you manage to get one, congratulations, you've made it, but there's no next gen games yet. And it just wasn't the same. Maybe Xbox kind of goes away from announcing console like launches at an E3 event. Maybe 2013 was kind of just an ender for that, to where they're like, we're just going to do Game Awards or somewhere else to reveal a console. We don't want any of that, vibage anymore. So maybe it's something to do with that, but I do miss the days of, and ooh, what's behind this little black shroud? And they lift up the curtain, and lo and behold, it's a console in a glass case. And The Rock or some other figure comes out there and shows off a new tattoo with some IP on it or something. And they talk about it, and everybody gets excited, and there's dancing in the background music. Everybody's happy. There is something to be said for that, and I do miss it.
That's how the Xbox 360S was announced. Don Matrick lifted up the shell of just a regular Xbox 360, and it was just under there. bloody glorious console, by the way. I still have my Xbox 360 Slim. But yeah, I mean, we do have some companies going to E3, and we will have some normality. I will say this: we are going to see a new generation of consoles in 2027. For the love of everything, can we have just a live show again? Like, I want Sony to have a live show. I think they used to do really good E3 shows. I want all three to do good shows. Like, Nintendo hasn't beaten the E3 since the announcement of the Wii U, basically. So it's been a while, you know. I just miss those days, and I'll reminisce over the 360 days at any opportunity I'll have. Anyway, that's it for today's show. Everyone in chat's been awesome. Logan, have you got anything else to say before we close out the show?
No, just I wouldn't shock me at all, like you said, if we get Starfield announcement tomorrow for when that showcase is going to happen, and if it happens, we'll talk about it next week.
Yeah, so Starfield stuff, it's probably going to be announced tomorrow because Microsoft, for some reason, choose Wednesdays a lot of the time to announce stuff. And hell, the Elden Ring thing, although that's Bandai, that was announced at like 6 in the morning. So, who knows? Any announcement can come at any time. But yeah, everyone in chat's been awesome. The best chat, seriously. We'll be back at the same time next week. I will be putting out a video between now and the next podcast. And yeah, hope everyone has a good day. We're out. Peace. Have a good one.